Welcome to Empowerment Radio. My name is Dr. Friedemann, and I'm so glad that you decided to join me. Empowerment Radio is about giving you the insights, tools, and solutions to address some of the most challenging aspects of our daily lives. So sit back, relax, and empower yourself. Welcome back to Empowerment Radio. We're talking about loss and grief. Now, today I talk more about the loss of a person, not so much the loss of freedom or a job or the things that you feel like you lost along the way, maybe closeness, friends, community, all those things that also happened during COVID that you may have lost. But a lot of the principles that I'm going to share today can be also applied for those kinds of loss. Now, I would say my worst experience with loss was when I lost my parents, just shortly one after another in 2010. And it was rather unexpected, especially with my mom, who had a very, very short fight with cancer and then basically passed away 7 months after the diagnosis. And my dad had passed away a few months before that. And when I, basically had to face both of my parents being gone, I went through what, they are calling acute grief. And acute grief is just something where you do feel, a whole variety of emotions. Maybe at the beginning you do feel that there is just a sense of overwhelm. And for me, it was also this sense of anxiety and panic that I felt at that time, now being quote unquote an orphan and not having that, safety net of parents that you don't really need when you are in your 40s. But at that time, it just, emotions don't always make sense. You felt it, and I felt it. So I went through that and also went through sadness, especially around my mom. I sat by her bedside during her passing for 7 days and just basically watched her, transform from being actually someone who looked rather healthy to someone who really was barely recognizable. And she was on many drugs and just, you saw her body shutting down, her body dying. And I wish she would have died faster than she did. And so I struggled also afterwards with the sadness about her struggle and her difficulties with letting go. But what I also noticed is that there was very quickly something that felt almost like a light. And it was a strange feeling, and I felt a little guilty about this for a moment. I felt like, well, why should I feel somehow lighter now that my parents are gone? Why should there be a sense of almost relief? Relief, maybe I don't have to worry about them, or relief, I don't have to, wait for something that I knew would happen and now it happened. I couldn't really wrap my mind around it, but now looking back, I understand that this part of the healing going through grief also has some of those emotions included. They say that a child is born twice, the first time and the second time when the parents die. And what I felt, and I think what often people experience with loss, is that there is also something changing inside of you, a certain kind of shift, a certain kind of renewal almost. And that's something I'm going to talk about later more. But going through this acute phase and not blocking away my emotions or feeling like I have to make myself feel wrong to feel one or the other, or I should force myself to really sit down and cry at least for 2 weeks straight. I just allowed myself to have those feelings, made the grieving process, I believe, more productive, and made the grieving process also something that I embraced more as something that was passing and was opening up for me a different way of living, a different way of looking at life. And the pain was, as it often is, in that more acute and then later on integrated way of grieving, the pain is then also shared with joy, or looking back and thinking about nice memories, or again, feeling like there is a forward movement into the future and things like that. Now, when you do not have those, like natural unfoldment of grief, and you experience more prolonged grief, that's when you may get stuck in a cycle that is almost like self-perpetuated. And that cycle is more the cycle of the fear of the losing control. You're feeling like, wow, I have no control over what happened. I have no control now what's going to happen in my life after this loss. Or you're feeling like that, you have to really stay sad because you cannot forget about the person that just passed away. And if you would actually feel happy or relieved or light, that would do a disservice to that love. So you're equating love with pain. The love that you had for the person before that person died is not painful. But now that the person has gone, you may feel like, well, I need to really be in agony because that's honoring my love. And so you stay in that and don't want to let go. You don't want to forget. You tell yourself it's never going to be the same. Everything has changed now. That void will never really be filled. And often there is also that nagging regret and guilt inside of you that keeps you grieving longer. It's that rumination of, well, why did I not do this? Or should I have done that more? And that just keeps you in a loop. Your subconscious literally says, well, we have to get some answers here. And those answers you cannot give yourself. When you have regret, you're telling yourself, well, really, I have to chastise myself. If you are feeling like, nothing will change, everything has changed now and nothing will ever be the same and nothing can fill the void, then again, you're giving yourself basically a message of hopelessness. And being in that place, this is not necessarily a conscious choice, but being in this place can lead then also to, a social isolation where you don't want to even seek out help or connect to others, look outside of that, cocoon of pain and sadness. It can often lead also, unfortunately, to self-medication with, just alcohol and drugs. And it can go into a deeper depression. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid this prolonged grief. You don't have to tell yourself that there is a certain time frame to that grief. What I found about my grief was it is natural. Your mind knows how to grieve. Your mind has its own way of grieving. And that is something that I feel we can support. And that's what I want to talk about now. What can we do to support the grieving process? But we also have to let this grieving process just be an organic way. Like I see it a little bit like a wound. You have a wound in your body. Yes, you can, of course, either ignore it, which may actually make the wound get infected, and that may make that healing process more difficult, or you can constantly just look at it and focus on it and try to disinfect it all the time. But in the end, you actually only see yourself as that wound. And that wound may cover just like 0.5% of your body, but because that's what you focus on, that's the pain you're feeling, that's that identity you're taking on, and then you're overlooking all the rest. So how can we make grief enough space in your life without feeling that the grief becomes all-encompassing, as I said before, without you feeling that you lose yourself in it? So one of the things that you can and need to do is to take care of your physical body. Your poor body does not know exactly what's going on. Your body is totally innocent with it all. So if you are having the tendency, I'm not hungry, I'm not thirsty, no, I don't want to walk, I don't want to go outside, no, I can't sleep either. Well, all of those things are actually making your body get out of balance. When you don't really take care of your body feels like, well, there's really something wrong. And then your body goes more into stress and anxiety mode, and that just adds fuel to the fire. when you do feel that you're dealing with loss and grief, you have to be adamant to take care of yourself. Take care of your physical body, because you need your body. It's hosting your mind. It's hosting your soul. You need your body to feel more stable and grounded. So that's number one. Now, another thing that's really important is, of course, taking care of your emotions. Now, in that regard, be kind and gentle with yourself. There's such a difficulty when we do feel grief, and that has to do with how other people also respond to grief. I know countless people that say like, oh yeah, he's dealing with the loss of something or someone. I don't want to disturb this person. Well, ultimately that often comes from that fear of having to go through this yourself. We are all afraid of loss because it has a trifecta of fear triggers. It's change, it's discomfort, and it's ultimately, dealing with something that we are not in control of. So not feeling in control, having to go through pain, and then dealing with change, that's something that freaks the mind out. And so when we are, seeing someone grieving, we say, oh, this is something scary, we don't want to go there. And so for the one that is grieving, that's a sign of, well, I'm in it on my own, and it's actually a weakness. It's, bothersome to others. I need just to isolate myself. And being in that isolation, we are not always the nicest to ourselves when we are grieving. We are not always the kindest. We are just like, basically either going into, the self-defeating pattern of ignoring our needs, or we are doing the ruminating and then beating ourselves up or telling ourselves that we are, just really now in a place where life doesn't make sense or anything like this. So we don't really respond with compassion and kindness to the grief. So that's a really important thing. Just when you grieve, be nice to yourself, be kind to yourself, give yourself the attention that you need, and especially with your emotions. Now, what I found also in my research about grief so interesting is that it's really not necessarily true that you're better off if you are talking about your grief. Now, some people may feel that's what I need. That's really what I need. I need to, find help. I need to go to someone. I need to go to a bereavement group. It may feel good to do that, but also it turns out that you don't heal or grieve any less or faster when you do that. So don't judge yourself when you say, I want to do this by myself. Now, if you have the strong inclination, if you feel so much better to talk about it, I need to hear someone else, guide me through this, by all means, go for it. If you want to write about it, do it. If you want to talk about it, do it. But if you have that feeling like, I want to actually really just go inside, and it's almost like you go into your own little incubation chamber, don't judge yourself for that. You're not necessarily shutting down. You're not necessarily not dealing. You're just dealing with it your own way. The warning sign is when you are feeling that you're going deeper and deeper and deeper into a sense of hopelessness. That is when it goes into that prolonged grief, and that's where you really should ask for help. We'll be right back after the break with more on how to grieve without losing yourself. Hi, Dr. Friedemann here. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more about fear and anxiety, here you'll find guided meditations, webinars, and interviews with some of the most renowned experts in the field of empowerment. Delve into the over 230 videos and more to come every week.